There's a fish. Feels like a decent one. With the olive crystal flash. My olive flash paragon. Oh, he's a pretty brownie. Pretty brownie. Took the olive flash paragon. Thank you there, Mr. Brown. So what I want to do today is I want to talk about the microliter. I'm going to talk about my particular formula in a little while, but I really want to talk about the pros and the cons and the common misconceptions. When it comes to straight up nymphing, I really like a leader that is specific for the task, meaning I don't like an all-around leader. I like a leader that is simply designed for Euro nymphing, or for nymphing, I should say. And when it comes to nymphing and using a Euro nymphing technique, in my opinion, there's nothing more deadly than this type of fishing, especially when it comes to finesse fishing, because I really think Euro nymphing is really the ultimate in finesse fishing. And when you thin your leader out, you're just going to put more fish in the net. So what I want to talk about first is the common misconceptions. Well, there's only one, and that misconception is that it is difficult to cast. So my leader is 4X and I have a 5X sighter, and you can see I have a 2/8 bead and a 2/3 on my dropper, and I'm casting right here. It's about 25 feet, and you can see with proper fundamentals of casting, not only is it extremely accurate, it's actually very easy. And that is a common misconception. You hear people, even some top-notch guys, they talk about the difficulties in casting a microleader, and I just absolutely disagree. And then you'll see people do videos about it, and they actually talk about the difficulties as if they have to say it. But you can see that is a 25-foot cast there, and just good fundamentals, boom, and I put it exactly where I want it. I'm gonna strip some more line out here, and I'm gonna make a 30-foot cast, and with ease, boom, pops over there. I do a nice tuck cast, and I'm fishing this run. So I've done a video on casting, and I really hope you check it out. But with proper fundamentals, this is absolutely easy to cast, and it can be extremely accurate as well. So let's talk about the pros of the microleader. So first of all, the sensitivity is really second to none. And when I talk about sensitivity, I'm talking about the sensitivity in the sighter. There's a fish. So this is a little brownie, hit my dropper, a little pheasant tail. Now, that fish, I never felt it, okay? This little guy right there, thank you there, Mr. Little Brown. That little guy right there, I just saw my sighter barely move. And that's the beauty about the microleader, that it's so sensitive. And when I talk sensitivity, I'm talking about sensitivity in the leader, not sensitivity in the rod. I actually think sensitivity in the rod is certainly helpful, but I do think it's overrated, because if you're feeling the strikes more than you're seeing them, that means you're missing a lot of fish. So if you really want to get dialed in on Euro nymphing, you really got to move away from feeling your strikes to seeing them. And that's the beauty about this microleader, is the sensitivity is off the charts. So nice tuck cast. So that's a 5X sighter I have onto a 4X main leader. And you just see every little, I know you can't pick it up on the GoPro, but you just see every little movement on the sighter. And if it's a thicker formula, yes, you can see them, but the moves need to be a little bit bigger to register on the sighter. So that's the beauty about this. You can see every little micro movement in the sighter, which And you'd be surprised. It's amazing how many big fish that I've caught that the sighter, there you go. See, the sighter just stopped. And this is a decent fish. But so that's what's amazing is that right there, that strike barely registered. Not as big as I thought. Just the sighter's, it's floating along there, it's in the drift, and it just hesitated just a smidge. He hit my olive flash paragon. I thought that was a rainbow, I'll be darned. That's a stocked fish that got out of the pen. Not too many up in this section. Boy, he swam pretty far. So once again, just fishing this is a really nice run here. Actually, I call it a slow eddy. So my bugs are achieving depth, and I got my eyes on that sighter, and I've got this little bow, and the beauty about it is when you just see these little hesitations, they just register so much nicer with a light 4X or a 5X sighter, much more than a 1X or a 2X. The movements need to be a little bit bigger to register in a sighter like that. So you're just picking up all these little subtle movements. All right, this looks like a really nice area here. Put it right up there at that's about a 25-foot cast there, bringing it right down the edge, and there is a fish. And I don't know if you could see that sighter jump, but once again, that's the beauty about it. It had a nice little bow in it, and the sighter just jumped a smidge, and got a decent fish on here too. It's another rainbow. Wow, a nice one. So once again, we got a nice, I call it a slow eddy. You can see this rock formation right here. It dumps off, and you got this moving water. I caught a few fish on this side, and then I reached that outer seam there, or I'm sorry, that inner seam on the other side. That's about 25 feet away, and you can see I did a real easy cast, nice tuck cast, and I was able to bring it right down that edge. And that's the beauty about this leader is when I say there's no sag, there's virtually no sag. And when you have a heavier leader, you do get pullback, so you do have sag. Now, when I'm talking about a micro leader, I'm talking about a diameter that is at least 3X. I really prefer 4X and 5X, but anything over 3X in diameter is really not considered micro. So if you want to start thinning out, just think about 3X. So the formula that I use is I like a Euro Nymphing line, and I like a braided core. This is an Airflo braided core. And what I do is I strip the coating at the end, and I whip finish a small loop that's just honestly barely big enough to get my leader through. As a matter of fact, sometimes I have to take a hook to open the hole to fit my, boy, a nice fish just rose right there, to fit my leader through. And then I do a 16-20 to attach it. So the length is, so this is Pezon Michel Color Line. This is a line, it's my favorite. This is a line, you can only get it out of Europe. You can't get it here in the States. What I really like about Pezon Michel is it is designed specifically for Euro nymphing. It's been designed to cast specifically with Euro rods. My second favorite line is called Sempe, and that is something that you can get here in the States. The reason I like Pezon over Sempe, honestly, it's very similar as far as the engineering. But what I really like about it is I think the colors pop a little bit more in Pezon. But if you want, if you don't want to pay for overseas shipping, you can get Sempe here in the States. But so this is a 10-foot 9-inch rod, and what I do is this diameter is 4X, and it's 0.18 millimeter, and I have about 18 feet of 4X to my sighter, which is pink and white Pezon Michel Color Line, and this is 5 feet of 0.16 millimeter, which is 5X. So I have 18 feet or so of 4X to 5 feet of a bicolor sighter to my tippet ring, and my tippet ring is a 1 millimeter tippet ring. I don't like 2 millimeters. These are, I mean, it's going to take a really large trout to break this, and this is 7X tippet. So I am a 6X and a 7X guy. It is a rare day that I'm using 5X, especially when I'm using a 5X leader. I'm never going to use 5X tippet on a 5X leader. I always want my tippet to be at least one size smaller, so if it does break, the fish is going to break the tippet before it breaks the sighter. If I'm fishing larger water, maybe I'm getting a steady dose of larger fish, heavier currents, I will use a 4X sighter in case I want to go up to 5X. But this is really my meat and potatoes leader. So 18 feet of 4X, 0.18 to 5 feet of 0.16, which is 5X to my tippet ring. In the description, I'll put what brand that I use and some alternatives. It's a little windy right here, and that's another benefit. It's such a light, thin leader that it's not as affected by the wind as a heavier, thicker diameter. I mean, just think of it as sail. The wind is going to catch that thicker leader, and it's going to either rip it upstream or rip it downstream, where this is, because it's so thin, it's not nearly as affected by the wind. Now, some people are going to ask me, why do I have 18 plus 5, 23 feet of leader to a tippet ring, and then, of course, my tippet on? Why is it so, I said hit there. Why is it so long using a Euro line? The way I like to do it is on my furthest cast. I like the Euro line because it really helps managing your line. I'm a big proponent of learning how to manage your line correctly. When you're managing your line with very thin line, it's just hard to do it. If your hands get wet, it starts sticking to you like it's a spider web. If it's raining outside or if it's cold, you really can't feel it. When you have the Euro line in your hand, you have the tactile feel of fly line, and you can see it's just so much easier to manage. So on my furthest cast, so let's say I'm casting 30 feet, right there it's about a 30-foot cast. You can see really easy to manage, and my Euro line was about halfway up my rod. So that's when you really got to manage your line on those really far casts. I'll make a 20-foot cast here, and you can see where my Euro line is. It wasn't even up to my first guide. So if I'm getting a vertical sighter, you can see that I still have Euro line out, but you don't have a lot of it. And it just worked for me. You just have to find your sweet spot. But that's why I like about a 23-foot leader just to my tippet ring. You know, one of the reasons that people talk about the inaccuracy of the micro leader, it's because of the casting style. You've seen some videos where they recommend doing this oval cast, and it's the oval cast that leads to the inaccuracy if you don't time it right. I mean, certainly it works, but what happens is these rods are so sensitive. If you're not watching your cast and you just don't time it right, you're actually going to feel the rod load when your bugs, if you're casting from your right side, when your bugs come out to the right, you're going to feel it load out here. So it's going to cause you to cast your forward cast quicker. So I'm going to go out here and cast, and see what happens is it lazily lands to the left side. So when you're doing an oval cast and you go forward too soon, it lazily lands to the left. And when you do it from the left side, an oval cast, and you do it too soon, it's gonna lazily land way right of your target. So that's the problem with the oval cast, and I do not recommend it. I'm talking about a traditional cast, which you can see all day long, and boom, it goes exactly where you want it. There's a fish. Nice. Boy, see, this is where that micro leader really excels right there. I was over a 25-foot cast, had to get it over this quicker water. It's a little bit slower area over there where the fish was, and I was able to have my whole leader tight, and it was no pullback. I had no sag, whereas that heavier leader formula, you would have had a bit of a pullback, and it would have been really tough to fish that unless you stepped out in front into this quicker water, which is a little treacherous. Thank you there, Mr. Brown. There's a fish. Boy, I don't know if you saw that sighter jump. I did a fly change, and I put on a, I call it my stealth Perdigon. It's just a really drab Perdigon, size 16 with a 2/8 bead, and that was the first cast. I had fished this with a waltz and picked up that nice little brownie. I'll just keep saying it over and over, the sensitivity and the feedback that you get from this micro leader is really second to none. There's another fish. 2 casts, 2 fish. Right on that seam there. Got him on the stealth Perdigon again. It's in a natural color. It's a nice, decent brownie. Both of those fish, boy, he's a nice chunk. Nice 13-inch, 14-inch chunk. Both of these fish, thank you there, Mr. Brown. Both of those fish just had I had a nice bow on my sighter and just barely saw my sighter twitch. Once again, if you can move away from feeling them to seeing them, your catch rate is just going to skyrocket. That's when you know you've really advanced, when you really start seeing most of your strikes. So what are the cons about a micro leader? So there's a couple, but they're not a hindrance. You know, like I said at the beginning, I am a big believer. I like a leader designed for a specific job. So it's very difficult to float a sighter with a 4 or 5X leader. I mean, it's actually impossible. You really can't. I mean, I do grease the sighter up every now and then if I want to set it on the water. And if I have 1, 2, 3 bead, I might be able to float it for a foot or two. But really, if I want to float a sighter, I just change my leader. I carry an extra spool with me. I have extra leaders with me. So if I get to an area where I'm going to do a lot of floating of the sighter, I will change my leader. But if I'm fishing like a stream like this, Penns Creek, it's probably going to be rare that I switch my leader because the leader is this micro leader is so light, I can hold it up off the water if I want to, if I'm in an area that that really calls for floating the cider, or I will simply throw a dry dropper, which people will tell you is a con. So the only thing you can't do when throwing a dry dropper with this microliter is you can't throw big, bushy, wind-resistant flies like chubby Chernobyls or stimulators. But I don't really use them anyway. I mean, I like to use a fly that is pretty much hatching. I mean, it's June right now, so there's a lot of bug activity here on Pens. And I like a lot of CDC flies, size 16s, size 14s. CDC is very aerodynamic, so it tends to fold on your forward cast, and you can actually cast quite well with a microliter and a 2.3 bead, and I can throw it up to 30 feet. But any close range dry dropper work with a microliter, you can absolutely do. If you have to throw bigger flies, then you would have to change your leader. But once again, on a day like today, I mean, if I have to do any dry dropper work, I can still do it with this microliter. But, and then, you know, I will jig streamers with it. Is it the perfect leader to jig streamers? No. Usually if I'm gonna do a steady dose of jigging streamers, I will probably put on a 3X leader, still very small, but I can go up to 4X if I want to on that leader. But on a day like today, if I go to a hole that I want to jig a streamer, I'll change my tippet to 6X and I'll jig a streamer. I do it a lot, and it can absolutely do it. So those are really the only cons, and I don't think they're that big of a con, because the benefits that you're gonna get if you're out there and you are nymphing, which, you know, 90% of what you're doing during the day until a hatch pops up is nymphing, and you are just gonna have better success if you embrace the microliter. You can't throw dries with it, but once again, if a hatch pops up and I want to throw dries, I just carry an extra spool with me. It has a 2-weight line on it. I just simply switch spools, and within 5 minutes, I'm casting a dry fly. There we go. This is a perfect example. It's about 2 feet deep. It's a decent fish here. It's about 2 feet deep. I'm making straight upstream casts, and I'm holding my line, cider and leader off the water, and I'm able to work it back to me and work the slack back to me. So you can see the benefits of that micro leader. I was able to hold it up off the water and get a really nice drift and have a really nice brownie on here. Nice solid fish. And I lost him right at the net, but that was a good 15-incher. He hit the waltz. But once again, this is almost floating your cider water. It's a little too choppy for it, but you can see on that cast, I was throwing straight upstream. It's about a 25-foot cast, and I'm able to hold it right off the water and work it right back to me. And that's the bottom. There we go. So here's another advantage of the micro leader. This is a deep hole in here. It's probably well over 3 feet deep. It's probably 4 feet. Nice jump. Oh, I love that. So I really like a short piece of tippet from my cider to my bottom fly. Got him on the dropper. So I got that brownie on a size 16 stupid simple pheasant tail. So I'll tell you what I did there. So we have a deep trough here. It's probably, you know, it's over 3 feet deep, and I actually dip my cider about a foot underneath the water. So I like fishing with a really short piece of tippet from my tippet ring to my bottom fly. So I have about, it's a little over 3 feet. It might be 3.5 feet down to my bottom fly. Most of this area that I'm fishing is about 2 feet in depth. So maybe 2.5 feet. So I find when I have my sighter just at the surface of the water, I pick up strikes a lot better because it as soon as that hits, it translates right away. A lot of people, if you use, say, 6 feet of tippet, which certainly works, what you have to do is when you get into these shallower areas, you have to lift your sighter off the water, and sometimes you can have it a foot and a half above the surface of the water. So it just takes a little bit longer for that strike to translate up in the sighter. So if you have your sighter near the surface, you really see those strikes right away. And the benefit of having a micro leader, and in this case 5X, this is very deep out here. So I'm able to dip my sighter to get it to depth. And since it's a 5X sighter, that surface current, which is faster than the bottom, it doesn't really affect the drift. I can just dip the sighter and achieve the right depth. And if I had a thicker sighter on a 1X or a 2X, the surface current is actually gonna grab it and rip the bugs out of the strike zone. So once again, just another benefit. You can have that short piece of tippet, you get into deeper water, and you can just simply dip your sighter. So I do a tuck cast, and now I'm dipping it, and I've actually put it another 1.5 feet under the water. Actually felt it bounce off the bottom there. Okay, I put a mop on here. Let's see if we can dredge the bottom. Nice tuck cast. I'm gonna get a really nice drift in here now. Just dipping my sighter. There's a fish. Nice fish too. Put that mop on. Dunked my sighter about another 1.5 feet, and boy, this is a heck of a nice fish here. Big old rainbow hitting the mop there. Big old rainbow. Just on a side note here, I got 7X on, and you can see I just got a nice bend in this rod, keeping it low. And this is probably a good 15, 16-inch fish here. I'm not babying it. Just gonna get his head up. Bring him to the net, just like that. Don't fight it any different. Good 15 inches. Thank you there, Mr. Bow. Thank you, Mr. Bow. So once again, 3.5 feet of tippet. This is at least 4.5 feet deep here. Make a nice tuck cast here. And then just as it starts to drift, I just start dunking it. And he hit pretty much right out in front of me, maybe slightly below. And I had the sighter buried. The pink is 18 inches, and I had it buried almost to the top. So I'm dipping in another 1.5 feet. Just one of the great benefits of the micro leader. So I'm going to be calling it quits today. I hope you enjoyed today's video on the micro leader. You know, the micro leader is one of those things that as you get your proper fundamentals down, it's one of those things that you can add to really start upping your Euro game. You can fish farther away, lighter bugs, no sag. But the one big thing, well, that is a big plus, but another big thing that you're going to get is the sensitivity in the leader, and you feel just this really awesome connection to your bugs. And when you feel connected and you have that sensitivity in your leader, it just translates into seeing more strikes, because you really want to move from feeling to seeing, and the micro leader will really help you do that. One of the cons I failed to mention is as you start thinning your leader out, sometimes people have a difficult time picking up the sighter because it is such a small diameter. So you really got to find those colors that really pop for you, because people see colors differently than others. So just make sure you find a color that works for you. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you give me a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. I'm happy to help you out. If you like what I'm doing, I would appreciate if you would subscribe. And as always, tight lines, everybody. I'll talk to you later.